This is Phil Dixon, baseball historian. Of course, I go by Phil S. Dixon, baseball historian, coming to you live tonight on a beautiful night here in Kansas City. So I'm going to talk to you about what I do. And what I do is have a feature that goes, it's this day in African American baseball history. Of course, today is September the 7th, 2025. So we're going to go back and review some things that happened on September the 7th historically. And of course, I always call these the Sabbath Day edition of this day in black baseball history. And in a way, that's something that can be celebrated simply because there was a time when people foolishly labeled the African Americans baseball player around the turn of the century up to around 1930, maybe a little bit beyond that, is amateurs. And so in New York and say Philadelphia, where they had blue laws and they didn't allow the National or American League to play games on Sunday, they would allow, quote, the amateur players to play. And that gave the spotlight to many famous African American teams, whether they're the Lincoln Giants or the Cuban Giants, the Philadelphia Giants, and they would, the Cuban X Giants, can't leave them out. They would come to New York and they would play and draw big crowds. In many of those games, they did not charge an admission. What they did is you had to buy a scorecard to come into the park, and that was their way to get around the admission fee. So, because someone foolishly labeled these ball players as amateurs, which they did strategically to keep them to keep them in a position of making money for them. That's what they did. And so when I do these Saturday editions, sometimes I like to bring that up because these athletes were used to break down the blue laws all around the country, especially in some of those states that continue to have those blue law restrictions for a number of years. And so, so this is a Sabbath Day edition of This Day in Black Baseball History. So let's jump right in here and see what we can come up with. I'd like to say that I've been doing baseball research, conducting baseball research, researching newspapers, going to libraries, archives, historical societies, writing letters for over 45 years. And so I have a lot of information that's been built up over that time. And so some of this information I'm giving to you is just things that are in my mind. And so I'm happy to share them with you. So, and many of these things I'm giving, if you follow this page very often, are things that if you're really deeply enmeshed in African American baseball history, you're not going to find this stuff in books because I haven't had a chance to write it yet. And my approach to the research is to get out there and to use a popular phrase that's used these days. I was always boots on the ground, so I went to people's houses and interviewed people, traveled around the country, interviewed people. I was always on the streets of my community, which for the most part was Kansas City, Kansas, where I started off. And then, of course, it spread to Kansas City, Missouri, because, they're border states. And so many ball players and both guys who were played semi-professional and in the Negro Leagues and before. When I started, there were guys who had played before they were Negro Leagues, but they played on what they call, quote, colored teams, were able to give me information. So I appreciate that. I see somebody named Jonathan Morris. He's saying hi. I see you, Jonathan. So, hey, well, hang with us, Jonathan, and let's see if we can see if we can give you something you never heard before. So we're going to jump in. The first one is going to be September 7th, 1908. And the Baltimore Weldons, under the leadership of manager George Matthews, won the pennant of the local, quote, colored league with a 7-4 win over the Annapolis Grays before a crowd of 2,000 at Union League Park. And then Union League Park, of course, was in Baltimore. Now, what's interesting, whenever I give a fact, I try to break it down a little bit, maybe add something to it that you might not be thinking about. Well, see, first of all, teams are already playing for championships and regionally all over the country. And every major city had a number of teams. And, of course, the Baltimore Weldons who were one of the really great teams up in there. Um, Joe Gans, the boxer, a professional boxer around the turn of the century. Matter of fact, he had one of the fastest left hands that there ever was in boxing. Joe Gans died in 1910. Joe Gans ran a baseball team out of Baltimore as well, played baseball as well. So anyway, um, they won the game, and there was a crowd of 2,000. And you think about it, these guys, nobody's supposed to know who they are. They don't get a lot of publicity. Many times they don't mention their first names, and we can go on and on and on. But they're able to draw a crowd of 2,000. If you were to put a men's team together right now, go in your community, how many years would you have to play before you could draw a crowd of 2,000? And so there's minor league teams that are under major league that don't draw 2,000 for a game. So that lets you know that people saw these ball players and they knew that these ball players are good, and they certainly were not amateurs. Even the Baltimore Weldons, who once again were not a part of a league. So thought I'd put that out there. We'll go to next 1931, September 7, 1931. Paul Carter pitched a no-hitter against the Baltimore Black Sox. So we're back to Baltimore. But of course, that game was played in Darby, Pennsylvania. The final score was 6-0, and Carter walked 1 and struck out 4. And Darby won when Biz Mackey and Martin Diego singled, and Rev Kennedy walked to load the sacks, and William Judy Johnson singled to center, scoring 2 runs. Interesting thing, boy, I can break this one down a lot. I had the opportunity to interview William Judy Johnson on many occasions. He played in the what they call the first, once again, quote, Colored World Series. It's interesting that they call it the Colored World Series, because when the National American League play and there's no blacks in the league, they don't call it the White World Series. So I don't like to call it the Colored World Series, but just for you people who may not know, I just want to break that down for you. So we'll say he played in the 1924 World Series, right? And that was the Kansas City Monarchs against Hilldale. So I had a chance to interview him, and I do actually have several pictures where he actually signed that long panoramic for me that I had produced back in 1980 when I was, like, believe it or not, 23 years old. And that's what I used to fund my research back then. So anyway, Judy Johnson, of course, Judy Johnson is a member of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. He's a third baseman, tremendous player. Biz Mackey is also a member of the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. His name was Raleigh Biz Mackey, and I don't know if you follow football, but during the 70s, early 80s, Riley Odoms, who played for the Denver Broncos, that's a relative of Biz Mackey. I brought that out many years ago. And of course, Martin Diego, who's also one of the people in the sequence that scored. He is in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame at Cooperstown, New York. Been there a number of years. He was a Cuban, and Mackey, by the way, was from Texas, but and Judy Johnson was from Delaware. And so anyway, Martin Diego, going back to Martin Diego, yeah, he's in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame, but he's also in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame. And since he's a native of Cuba, he's in the Cuban Baseball Hall of Fame as well. So if he had played in Canada, he would have been in the Canada Baseball Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, he didn't get there, but he's in Hall of Fames all over the place. Yeah, he's in the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame too. So he was just a great all-around player. Could pitch, could hit, could run, could do a lot of things. And usually I compare him to players like Bullet Rogan for their all-around expertise as pitchers and as baseball players at every position. So they can hit, they can pitch, and they kill you just any kind of way they could with their durability and their athleticism on the bases and at bat. So that's Martin Diego. Of course, Rev Kennedy. Rev Kennedy, boy, I wrote about Rev Kennedy in 1934 when the New York Black Yankees played the Dizzy Dean All-Stars. Man, that guy lit into Dizzy and the All-Stars. And that is part of my book. It's called The Dizzy and Daffy Dean Barnstorming Tour. It has a subtitle of Race, Media, and America's National Pastime. If you've never read that, You might want to get that. I break it down. I break it down in a way that you begin to understand the effects that racism has had on baseball's history, telling the story. And most people, when you read some books and that people have written on the Negro Leagues, when you finish with the book, you're no more empowered than you were when you started. Now, you might know some more information, but I try to write books that when you put the book down, you have more knowledge and power. You're empowered to talk about the subject in a different way, and that's been my whole thing since I started back in the 1980s, trying to tell this story. So anyway, that was some good information. So let's go to another one. This is September 7, 1939. We have Satchel Paige hurled 3 innings of one-hit ball, struck out 5 batters in a Monarchs second team 5-3 loss to the Ethiopian Clowns at Douglas Park in Rock Island, Illinois. Said a crowd of 3,000 witnessed the game. Now I've been to Rock Island. I presented in Rock Island up in the Quad Cities, up there Moline, East Moline, and Davenport. Matter of fact, a great Kansas City Monarch player came from Davenport. I used to talk to him all the time. Gene Baker, and another one lived up there who played for the 1935 Bismarck team. He was also in that area. That's Red Haley. So, but Rock Island. Interesting thing. The first time I went to Rock Island, and if you follow this, you probably know I played trumpet, and I was a musician. And we used to go to Rock Island there in the 70s. This was like maybe 75, 76. I was like, boy, I was probably like 19, 20 years old at that time. And we would play at a place called Woody's Magic Room up in Rock Island, Illinois. One of these days, I got to write a book about being out on the Chitlin circuit and playing in the 70s. Man, I went all over the place. And Rock Island was one of the places that we used to go. Tough little town. We used to go there. They used to call it like a little Chicago. And had a lot going on in that town. And Woody's Magic Room was the hot spot in that town. And I know when we would go there, and they'd have a wall in the back, and all the bands would write their name on the wall who had been there. And I remember specifically Gene Chandler had been there. Remember Gene Chandler, Duke of Earl? You probably remember that. Duke of Earl. Yeah. He had been there. And then Archie Bell and the Drills, I remember their name on the wall. And there were many others that had came through there. So we were able to write the name of our group on that wall, and it was Threatening Weather. We were out of Kansas City, Kansas, or greater Kansas City, because we did have some guys from Missouri who were playing with us. We had another guy with us. He's still performing down in around the Carolina area. He was from Gary, Indiana. One of the greatest performers I ever performed with. Could do a lot of good stuff. And so maybe I'll come in. I'll check with him and see if he wants me to share his information. You might want to follow him. He's still performing, but. And so I still perform too, but my stuff is lightweight now because, I may go out and play the national anthem or Take Me Out to the Ball Game just to get the crowd going, that kind of thing. But I practice every night just to stay sharp, even to do that. So I do remember something that Harry James said, and I never forgot this. Harry James, a big band leader, 1930s and the 40s, played all the way through the 60s. Great trumpet player. He used to say, if I miss one day of practice, I know it. If I miss 2 days of practice, the band knows it. If I miss 3 days of practice, the whole world knows it. And so I've always believed that you have to practice every day. And if not for a long period, you've got to pick that horn up and you've got to blow. And that's how I stay fresh out there when I'm out there giving presentations on baseball and playing the trumpet. I recently came back from Bismarck, North Dakota, and not only did I present at the Historical Society that day to a really nice crowd, but later on that afternoon, I went to the collegiate baseball game. They have collegiate baseball there. It's not minor league. And so I went there and I played the national anthem. In the 7th inning, I went and, believe it or not, got on top of the dugout. They held the mic there, and I played Take Me Out to the Ball Game for the whole crowd. So I'm just happy that that's a talent that, I still have, and I thank my mother for buying me that trumpet, because I begged her until she bought it, and she broke down before my father did. So I did get the trumpet, and here I am all these years later, 60 years later, still playing it. And I do play a Doc Severson model trumpet. So I'm out here. So all right then. So we said got Satchel Paige. I don't know if I need to say much about Satchel Paige. We'll just say that Satchel Paige, in my estimation, is the greatest strikeout pitcher that ever lived. That's all I can say. Satchel Paige. There's a number of books written about him. Satchel Paige. You got to go look him up if you don't know this name. Satchel Paige. Leroy Satchel Paige out of Mobile, Alabama. Died in Kansas City, I believe, 1982. 82. I do remember the day he passed. My mother, who's gone now, gone on to glory, but she was always my support and talking about baseball. And I remember coming in from work, and she said, "Hey, did you hear that Satchel Paige passed today?" And so she kept that news, so I heard about Satchel Paige passing away from my mom. And so they were of that same generation that Satchel Paige came through. So anyway, one of the all-time greats, Satchel Paige, man, I tell you, if you don't know about Satchel Paige, man, you don't know anything about the Negro League. So you better start there if you want to learn something for real. Okay, start with Satchel Paige, a good person to start with. Okay, and then we're going to go to September 7, 1942. And it says 2 members of the Cleveland Buckeyes baseball team were killed and 4 injured when a truck jammed the rear of their car at Geneva, Ohio. Buster Brown and Raymond Smokey Owens, pitcher, were killed instantly. Now, that is Ulysses Buster Brown, and of course Raymond Smokey Owens. If you notice all through this, I'm giving lots of nicknames: Biz and Rev, and here's one, Buster, and here's Smokey. The really good ball players got nicknames. So, and I mentioned Bully Rogan, nickname Satchel Paige. Well, we got nicknames galore today. But those 2 ball players were killed. And I remember talking to Othello Renfro down in Atlanta. And Othello Renfro, he played for the Kansas City Monarchs. He played for Cleveland, too. And he told me that in all the years, in all the travel of all the teams, these were the only 2 men who died while traveling as a member of a Negro League baseball team. These are the only 2. And so many times when I do go to storytelling festivals, I do honor them. Ulysses Buster Brown and Raymond Smokey Owens. I have a story that I tell, and it's a kind of poetic kind of story. And I tell the story usually at storytelling festivals. I don't. It's not a part of my regular presentation when I go out, and of course it's the title Ulysses Buster Brown and Raymond Smokey Owens. And so, yeah. So if you've ever heard me say that before, that means that you probably heard me in a storytelling festival. So get a chance to do that as well as a lot of baseball presentations. But we don't need to forget the men and these 2 men and the sacrifice all of these men made, being away from their families, being on the road all the time, and bringing joy to many people who still to this day don't respect them or never appreciated them. And so I know when I started in 1980, my big thing, excuse me, was to make sure that I spotlight these men for the next generation. And I've been at this for 45 years, and I think I've done a pretty good job, but there's so much more work to be done. And so here I am at another platform that didn't exist when I started. And I'm here still trying to tell the stories. Here, let me get a drink here. Here, be right back. Hang on, don't go anywhere. Hang on. All right, okay, I'm back. Okay, so that was September 7, 1942. Of course, moving a little more into the modern era, September 7, 1968, Riverside, California born Dusty Baker, you probably heard of that guy, makes his major league debut with the Atlanta Braves. The 2-time All-Star became a big league manager, winning manager of the year twice, 1993 and 1997, and led the San Francisco Giants to the 2002 World Series. Yeah, and since that time, He's done some pretty good things. He did some pretty good things down in Houston. So just want to spotlight Dusty Baker today. You know, I had a chance to meet Dusty Baker, and was honored to give him one of my books. I think, I probably gave him this book. I think when I met him a couple of years ago, it was either this book or the one before it on John Buckle Neal. This is my latest book. It came out about a year ago, and that book won the Best of Illinois Historical uh, Book Award. And so I'm not just recognized in my hometown, not just recognized by other baseball historians, people who like to read good books, read my books, right? And so I'm trying to teach, I'm trying to educate. Yeah, okay. So I'm back. Okay. So anyway, just trying to make sure that we continue to make this history live. Live and endure for the next generation and generations after we're long gone. Just like these players, they're long gone now. And even ball players that I met when I was in my 20s, they're gone on to glory. But I'm still here, and I'm giving their accounts and talking about them in ways that they couldn't talk to you, but they talked to me, and now I'm talking to you. Okay, so let's go. Let's go to another one. How about this one? I got Bill Matlock made his major league debut as a member of the Texas Rangers. He would go on to win batting titles in 1975, 76, 81, and 83. And I put in here, should be in the Hall of Fame. Damn. And you know, there's so many guys that played well that don't get the recognition. I don't know what you have to say. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who can crunch the numbers and say, this guy shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. But believe me, you don't want me to start crunching numbers, because I can show you a whole lot of ball players that in the Hall of Fame pre-1950 that shouldn't be there. And they were names, great names, of course, and their names have gotten longevity because being in the Hall of Fame. But the truth of the matter is, they're ball players with bigger numbers, and they're ball players with bigger numbers in the Negro Leagues we even got to that. So just know that Bill Matlock is somebody that you should talk to. And and he followed me from time to time because I put in some wrong information about him one time. He had to correct me on the years. So I know that he's out there, and he might be following this broadcast. I don't know. Maybe he'll get it. So anyway, we're going to go to my last one. September 7, 1975. Following a fourth inning home run, manager Dick Williams of the AL Angels, American League Angels, complained that John Mayberry's bat had a foreign substance on it and put the game under protest. Of course, Mayberry tossed that bat out. And Mayberry used a different bat in the sixth inning and hit another home run in the Royals' 8-7 win. Beat them by 1 run. And, of course, the game was played under protest, but hey, let me put it this way. I knew John. I do know John. John lives around Kansas City, and I see him occasionally at events down at the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. And John always gives me lots of accolades because I used to be assistant director of public relations for the Kansas City Royals back in the 80s. And John Mayberry at that time was a batting coach. And John used to say, man, Buck O'Neill taught me a whole lot about black baseball. He said, but the one I learned the most from was you. And he would give me all kind of accolades because I would come in, I would talk to him about different things. And I do remember a story. I was down in Wichita. I was interviewing Bob Thurman. I don't know, Bob Thurman, believe it or not, this guy came to the big league, is a 38-year-old rookie for Cincinnati. And so Bob, he ended up residing in Wichita. Bob was originally out of Oklahoma somewhere. Played with the Reds, played with the Homestead Grays, played with the Kansas City Monarchs, and then goes on and ends up a member of the Cincinnati Reds. And this guy could hit for power. So the Monarchs, the Royals at the time that Mayberry was playing, they had a guy named Charlie Lyle who was the batting instructor. And Charlie Lyle was good for George Brett because George Brett, they always say Charlie Lyle taught George Brett a lot. But Charlie Lyle wasn't a power hitter. And he couldn't help John Mayberry, who was one of their premier power hitters. So to not how am I going to say, to not offend Charlie Lyle, Bob Thurman used to meet with John Mayberry in the hotel room. He'd bring a batch, and they would go down in the ballroom and practice on strategies and how to hit the long ball. And Bob Thurman should have been a hitting instructor with the Royals, but of course he wasn't going to get that job. He could have been much more because Bob Thurman was enmeshed in all kinds of baseball knowledge and also structure. And Bob Thurman, most people don't know that story, but Bob told me, and he told me this on many occasions, how he used to meet secretly with John Mayberry to give him instructions. So Charlie Lyle never knew that. And so Charlie Lyle, thinking he was taking credit for Mayberry's batting, it was really Bob Thurman. And this is a story, guys, you won't find that written, but these are stories that ball players told me, and I would just go down to their homes. At that particular time, I used to go visit Bob Thurman and Bob Boyd, who played for the White Sox. They lived across the street from each other. Bob Boyd was a city bus driver after his career ended, and of course he was married to a lady who was a nurse that he had met working at the Martins. The Martins were the owners of the Memphis Red Sox, and she had worked at their hospital. And so a black-owned hospital, how about that, down in Memphis. And so she was alive as well. She just passed. I think she was over 100 years old. I think she passed about a year ago. I was down in Wichita, and Bob Boyd's granddaughter came over to hear me, not knowing. She said, have you ever heard of my grandfather? I said, who's your grandfather? She said, Bob Boyd. I think we must have talked about half an hour. I had to quit because I had to do a presentation, but I did keep her number. So that's just a little bit, guys, that we're talking about. Man, I'm almost into 30 minutes. This is probably the longest broadcast I've had in a while. So this is This Day in Black Baseball History, September 7th. Of course, today is 2025, but we're reviewing things that happened on September 7th historically. And then I usually give some commentary. So hopefully you've enjoyed the commentary. The commentary comes from years of sitting with the subject, meeting people. And guys, like I said, I'm the person who, I just didn't, call a person on the telephone and call it quits, have an interview. I would actually go out and visit these people. And I would go eat with them. I can remember, this is my last story for real. I can remember going to Memphis. Marlon Carter. I go down there interviewing. I'm sitting with Marlon Carter, third baseman of Memphis Red Sox. I can't remember what year it is, but I could find it real easy because we go down to this place and we're going to get some ribs. So barbecue ribs. So we're sitting in the restaurant and the TV is up in the corner, it's playing. And it was the night that Vanessa Williams became Miss America. And I remember we were sitting there eating our ribs, talking baseball, and we were debating, said, you think that she's going to become Miss America? And we were debating, and of course, she did. And so I can actually trace where I was on that particular night, because I was down there in Memphis. I don't even remember the name of the restaurant, but the ribs are pretty good, and the history was great that night. And, of course, had a chance to break bread with Marlon Carter, the famous third baseman of the Memphis Red Sox. So anyway, guys, that does it for tonight. Tonight's Sabbath Day edition. And I want to thank everybody for joining me and staying with me. And if you were just here for 2 minutes, that's great. But if you stayed longer, I certainly appreciate that as well. So feel free to come back and subscribe and lock me in, and then we can continue this conversation for many, many years to come. So I'm new to this format, so probably been in here. I think this is my second month, so I'm picking up subscribers as we go, and that's what I'm doing. So anyway, yeah, have a nice day. This is Phil Dixon. I'm going to sign off here at 30 minutes. It's my longest broadcast ever on this live. So, all right then, guys, you have a nice evening. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and enjoy NFL football, because I think we probably got one more game coming up tonight, the late game. So, all right, thank you, guys. You have a nice day. Bye.